What is up, guys? We are back with another video, and today we're checking out another X570 motherboard. This one comes from MSI and it is their MEG X570 Ace. So let's go ahead and take a look. Before we get into the board, let's actually see what comes in the box. We have 4 SATA cables, a Wi-Fi antenna, RGB extension cables, a MSI case badge, SATA cable labels, a product registration card, user's guide, and even a small MSI bag. Taking a first look at the MEG X570 Ace, it's definitely one of the best looking X570 motherboards that we've seen so far. It has a black PCB with black and gunmetal accents. Since this is an X570 motherboard, it features AMD's AM4 socket. MSI X570 motherboards will support both 2nd and 3rd generation Ryzen processors. Surrounding the CPU, we of course have our power delivery components, which are comprised of a 12+2+1 all-digital power design featuring the Infineon IR 35021 digital PWM controller and titanium chokes. These power delivery components are covered by 2 aggressively styled heatsinks, which are connected by a heat pipe. This heat pipe actually continues down the board and connects to the chipset heatsink. At the top corner of the board, you'll find 2 8-pin EPS connectors. Only one is required for operation, but having a second is great for overclocking and providing more stable power to your CPU. Moving over to the memory slots, there are 4 DDR4 DIMM slots that support memory up to 4600 MHz on Ryzen 3000 series processors. These memory slots are metal reinforced, and above them you'll find your CPU fan and optional CPU fan headers. And then moving over to the edge of the board, there are 3 4-pin fan headers and your 24-pin ATX power connection. As we move down the board, you'll find a USB 3.2 Gen 1 header, 4 SATA 6GB ports, a postcode display, and your front panel headers. On the bottom edge of the board, you'll find the rest of your headers and connections. So from left to right, you have your HD audio header, 3-pin addressable RGB header, 2 4-pin fan headers, 2 USB 2.0 headers, a USB 3.2 Gen 1 header, a USB 3.2 Gen 2 header, power button, reset button, the OC Genie Dial, and another 3-pin addressable RGB header. Now, the OC Genie Dial actually allows you to overclock without having to go in the BIOS or use AMD's Ryzen Master software. It is an actual physical dial, and it starts at 0 and goes all the way up to 11, and there are different overclocking presets dependent on the processor that you install. The entire bottom of the board is characterized by a large heatsink array. This is actually 4 separate pieces, not a single one like we saw on the ASRock X570 Pci. There are 3 M.2 heatsinks, and of course your chipset heatsink that does have that integrated fan. Now, integrated fans are something you are going to see on pretty much all X570 motherboards. That's just because the X570 chipset uses about 3 times as much power as the X470 chipset. Now, when it comes to the 3 Pci Express 4.0 M.2 slots, the top slot supports longer 110mm drives, while the bottom 2 support the standard 80mm drives. As far as expansion slots go, you have 3 Pci Express 4.0 X16 slots, all of which have MSI's steel armor installed, and then you have 2 X1 slots. If you have a single graphics card installed, it's always going to run at X16 speeds, but if you install 2 cards, they will run at X8 speeds. The spacing is actually pretty interesting, as the top slot is spaced to accommodate 3 slot cards. When it comes to audio, MSI is using their Audio Boost 4 solution, which makes use of the Realtek ALC 1220 audio processor and a dedicated headphone amplifier. MSI also includes their Nahimic 3 audio software, which provides virtual 7.1 surround sound. As we move up to the rear I/O, we can see there's a large cover on it, which actually has a mirror on it. And this is an infinity mirror, something we've seen on cases in AIOs, but never on a motherboard. It's gonna, of course, light up with RGB lighting when you have your system turned on. And overall, I think it looks quite good on this motherboard. And of course, you can control the lighting with MSI's Mystic Light software. The rear I/O has an integrated shield, which I think is becoming standard these days. Now, when it comes to buttons and connections on the rear I/O, from left to right, you have a clear CMOS button, a BIOS flashback button, Wi-Fi antenna connectors, a combination PS2 port, 2 USB 2.0 ports, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, 4 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, 3 are Type A and 1 is Type C, 1 gigabit Ethernet, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, and your audio connections. Now, the Wi-Fi on this board is provided by Intel's Wi-Fi 6, which is an 802.11ax solution, and you're getting Bluetooth 5.0. And then the 2.5 gigabit port is powered by the Realtek RTL 8125 controller. All right, guys, so if you've been following our X570 coverage, you know that this is actually the third X570 motherboard that we've gotten a chance to take a look at. And luckily, all of them have been kind of in the same price range, which is really nice. So we have a lot of the same features. Now, I do have to say, I think out of the three, this one is the best looking board. MSI has done a really great job of making this board just really attractive. I love the way it looks. I love the way it looked in our test bench. You know, it just looked really, really good. But on top of that, they have loaded it with features. All three of the boards that we've taken a look at have almost the same feature set. We have 802.11ax or Wi-Fi 6 on this board. We also have 2.5 gig LAN, and we have 3 PCI Express 4.0 M.2 slots. So those are like the key features that we've seen on a lot of these higher end boards, and those features are so great. Of course, Wi-Fi 6 is super fast, but if you do want to plug in, you have 2.5 gig LAN, and then you have the 3 M.2 slots. And with this board, you're only getting 4 SATA 6 gig ports, so having the 3 PCI Express 4.0 M.2 slots is a nice plus. You will see as you kind of go down in price, a couple of those slots might disappear, so having all three there is great. And of course, all three of them do come with the integrated heat sinks. Not only is that going to keep your M.2 drive nice and cool, but if your M.2 drive does come with the heatsink, you're not going to mess up the look of your board because these heat sinks, of course, are made to go with the board. You also get USB 3.2 Gen 2 on here as well. The internal connector is at the bottom of the board, which is a little different than what we're used to seeing. Being at the bottom of the board, you might have issues connecting it if you have a larger case. Of course, we tested this board on test bench, so we weren't really able to test that, so it's something you might want to look into as well. I really like this board. I mean, again, all three boards that we took a look at have the same feature set pretty much. I really like what MSI has done with this board. The infinity window is actually pretty cool too. First time we've seen like an infinity window on a motherboard. Of course, we've seen it on AIOs and in cases, but never on a motherboard, and having it here too is, you know, just pretty cool. The only issue that I kind of ran into with this board is the BIOS, and that's something that of course MSI can hopefully fix in the future. It's a little laggy and we had some issues with its saving settings, but again, BIOS updates can fix all of that. Now, if you have any questions about this board, go ahead and leave it in the comments section below. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. We will see you guys in the next one.